Right everyone, welcome back to episode 10 of What the Devil. Today Kane and I are joined by Statman Cam, who you all know quite well. Remember, if you are on the go, you can listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Link is down in the description. And I think this week we're going to start by talking about the big topic, Kobbie Mayu. He's obviously was fantastic for England, and he played against Amadou Onana, who's been linked with United quite a lot recently. And considering the fact that Casemiro might be going this summer, depending on how much money United get, and if United need to get rid of his wages, who is the kind of perfect partner to partner Kobbie Mayu from next summer onwards?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. He made a good impression over the last week. I think it was better than most United fans could have hoped for. And that Belgium game was an interesting kind of matchup, him against Onana. I think he came out on top, but I don't think Onana, he had a good game. A lot of people I'm seeing are saying that he's kind of the one that probably complements Mayu in both aspects, where Mayu can still, because you don't really want a deep midfielder who wants to control the entire build-up phase, because then you go, that probably limits Kobbie dropping into those positions like he likes to do. So you want someone who goes both ways, is kind of maybe not an all-action midfielder, but they've got quite a few different attributes like Kobbie. I think Onana does fit that criteria, but again, it will be a difficult kind of transfer to get over the line, I think, as well, because United are in for Braithwaite. But yeah, he's a good option, but I'm not too sure on the midfielder market. But I feel like there probably is different options around Europe, because obviously Onana was it Lille he came from for Everton, and you think if we are going to be spending 60, 70 mil potentially on Braithwaite and then another 50 to 60 on Onana, Ratcliffe said the other day about the next Mbappe, could you get the guy from that maybe French league? I'm not too aware, but I feel like that's something that they could also be looking at.
Yeah, for sure. I think you've got to look at skill sets really with the different players. I mean, I think a lot of people have been talking about Onana, but for me, I'm not 100% sold on him. I think there are areas where he does well, and I think you boys have both pointed out that obviously physically he's an absolute monster. I've seen you guys tweet it and heard you guys talk about it many times. Physically a monster, very good in the air, and he's decent enough technically, but the bit that worries me, particularly if United keep with Raphael Varane, Ten Hag places a lot of trust on that deepest line in terms of being the ones to break lines and move the ball forward. And Onana is better technically than he gets credit for, but I'm not sure he's the sort of guy who can sit in the deepest line and pick out passes between the lines as precisely as we need to. And particularly if we have Rafa Varane still within that team, I think you need really two of that back three to be very, very good at that. Obviously Martinez is fantastic at it, but I don't think Onana's good enough at that aspect. I think obviously he's good enough at the out of possession stuff. He's absolutely brilliant. And he's okay enough. He's decent enough technically. He's not bad by any stretch. But I just don't think the precision and the range of passing is there for him to sit in the middle of the back three, for example, and pick out passes the way I think Ten Hag would like.
Yeah, I can hear that as well, and that kind of might match up as well with the fee which you're potentially paying. You might not even get someone much better or a completely amazing, but you could probably potentially get someone who's got those build-up abilities or the different kind of attributes that Onana might have, and still have some of the stuff that he has, and they might be a fair bit cheaper, although United tax will probably get stuck on anyone, to be honest. But yeah, I'm to be honest, I'm a bit more, I feel like the centre-back market is quite talented at the moment, and there's quite a few different options there. I'm not entirely sure on the midfield market, this coming summer. I mean, internally as well, this is a different point, but is Mason Mount and Kobbie Mayu, do you reckon that works? Because I've heard a lot of people speaking about that. That's kind of another thing you can kind of consider, because I think that's what Ten Hag probably wanted to do. Whether it works, I'm not entirely sure.
So are we talking then about Kobbie Mayu playing as the more 8 or the 6 in that position? Because Mason Mount isn't a number 6 player. He's he's best at attacking. Kind of going towards a final third, 1-2 touch play, getting the ball forwards. He's not kind of the person that would sit back in front of the centre backs. And I think Kobbie Mayu is either. So in terms of Mayu's perfect partner, if that's what we're talking about, surely it can't be someone like Mason Mount. If you want Kobbie Mayu to play in that 8 position that you're seeing that Southgate, I think, potentially wants for the Euros, with Rice playing behind, Bellingham playing in front. Mason Mount may not be the guy to sit behind.
No, yeah, I do agree with that as well, to be fair. But I don't think Mayu should be like a strict number 8. Like he was picking up and it's good because he can do so much. Like I think he took one player on, nutmegged Onana and won a free kick in a dangerous area. But also I want him in an ideal kind of system, and like we're talking about an ideal midfield partner, I think he needs to be able to also kind of do that job going forward, so then Mayu can drop deeper, because he's got it's kind of annoying because he's got like a lot of different good attributes, so it's hard to get the most out of everything, and then you don't really want to stick him and focus on one side and then completely ignore his build-up qualities, which are really good, and being able to break the press with a quick turn of the shoulder. So I think ideally you want a midfielder who can kind of enter that number 8 zone, so then Mayu might be able to drop back in possession, but also they be quite stable and solid in build-up on their own and also defensively.
So someone maybe like Mayu himself, to a certain extent. You'd want two people with maybe similar skill sets who can then kind of play in conjunction, like one goes up, one stays back, rather than potentially having Onana sitting back, Mayu slightly further forward and Bruno even further forward. This is on the obviously assumption that Bruno Fernandes continues playing and Mayu continues playing in midfield. And so kind of where does Casemiro fit in all of this? Kind of is he potentially Mayu's perfect partner already, or is the fact that he's on a bit of a decline mean that he shouldn't be starting with Mayu next season? The only place he fits in
is on the plane to Saudi. Gotta be honest. We need someone that can pass the ball. He can't pass the ball 10 yards, and I think you're talking about rotations there. One of the really important aspects, if we're allowing players to rotate, is having players that when they start higher up can come deeper and actually take the ball on the half turn. And Casemiro, as we know, if he tries to receive the ball when he's not facing forwards, he'll basically just smack it into a corner and hope one of the wingers runs after it, basically. That's all he's got, or he's going to lose the ball. So I don't think Casemiro really, for me, fits in. I think what we need from Mayu's partner is, it's difficult because I think typically you see players in that number 6 position, they only become sort of world-class and absolutely elite in the later years of their career. It takes till they're 26, 27, 28, because you have to learn where the ball's going to be. You have to learn to anticipate, learn how to bring your teammates into the right position. And I think defensively, that's what I'd worry about with having Mayu there. But I think if it's going to work with Mayu as a deeper player, you'd need 2 absolute monsters physically who can run for days. And in Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes, you do have that. So I think it could be light defensively, light in the air, light in duels a little bit, but you do have a hell of a lot of running power there. So maybe it could work, but yeah, I think probably as an 8 is his better role. And then if you're going to play a 6, obviously it can't be Casemiro because he can't pass the ball. Onana, as we said, I've got reservations with him. I think if you're going to play Mayu as an 8, as you guys have rightly alluded to, you need somebody that can go forward to allow him to rotate in as well. I think realistically, most players in the modern game can do a little bit of both. Yeah. But it's difficult because you're almost asking for a perfect player in that number 6 position.
And it's hard to get that, exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to get that because even if we got someone like Frankie de Jong, I could see those two working reasonably.
I think that's a fantastic midfield.
You've still got the same concern in duels though, haven't you?
Yeah, do you know what? It's an interesting point which I noticed yesterday actually, where Declan Rice was speaking about a conversation he had with Mayu before the Belgium game, and he was basically saying that he was saying how he was speaking to Mayu, and what he wants is those kind of close connections. He wants the midfield to be quite tight and close together, so then they can kind of link up quite easier. And it's interesting seeing that comparison to what is happening at United a lot of the time, where you've got Bruno, who isn't often between the lines. He's often roaming around to see where he can get the ball to feet. Whereas you saw last night where England won that penalty was Mayu finding Bellingham, who was kind of holding that position between the lines. Rice was always nearish for those short passes. You need players who, like you said, like Frankie de Jong, maybe in an ideal world, that could work in certain aspects. There might be some defensive kind of talking points there as well. But having like 2 proper ball dominant players who are so comfortable linking up, that would be really nice to see in a midfield. And like Rice said, like that's kind of what Mayu wants. Like you can see that he wants to be able to link up with people. He's really good at turning a man and dribbling through space, but it's a lot easier to kind of bypass someone with a little 1-2, or kind of even having that option then means you can bypass them with a take on or a dribble, because there's that option there. Whereas a lot of times for United, you see someone kind of give it to Main. I think Dalot done it against Liverpool, and you just went, "Go on, lad, go on, you can sort it." Whereas,
it was a bit of a hospital pass, wasn't it?
Yeah, which makes it more impressive that I think he took on like 3 players and whipped it out wide. But yeah, no, it's interesting to see I think that comment was quite interesting from Rice, because it gives you a bit of an insight into what Mainu actually wants from a potential midfield partner.
Rice is kind of like
the guy.
What we're alluding to here, aren't we? Like, I feel like the kind of the perfect players who complement Mainu so well would be people who are already at the big clubs, such as Rice, such as Rodri, etc., who are able to get forwards. I've been kind of surprised by Rice this season, how good he's been going forwards. Obviously, he started at West Ham. He was just like that guy. He sat in front of the centre backs. He did score a nice few goals. Like,
he was
on his
a centre
debut.
back as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's true.
When he first came through.
On a side note, I think I've been just impressed with how Rice has really easily adapted to becoming someone who gets further forward for Arsenal so quickly.
You can tell he absolutely loves Mainu as well. Kind of like
they all seem to love
his
him.
Little Instagram comments, his comments in the interviews. It's funny, like Southgate as well. How, on a random side note, how has a player gone from a week and a half ago, the manager going, well, it might be a little bit too early for a call-up, to a couple of days ago he's going, yeah, he's brought us something that we haven't had in an England shirt before. Like, that is, I just think that's mad,
United did the same thing with his debut against Everton. So obviously people knew from pre-season watching him, like, he's good. Then he started against Everton to make his first Premier League start and his kind of debut. I know he made his debut last season, but first proper significant minutes this season. And it only took that one game against Everton. He got man of the match, and everyone was like, "Oh, actually, he should probably just start every game." And the same thing's now happened at England, where he's played a little bit minutes against Brazil, and then he started against Belgium, 74 minutes. So it's 90 minutes over the international break.
We forgot that Harvey Elliott done a Rabona against San Marino and under 21s. But yeah, Liverpool fans are fuming, and Newcastle fans, I've noticed. Newcastle fans were very on Twitter. Were very.
I've not heard one word about Lewis Miley for about 3 months now.
Yeah, innit?
No idea if he's still playing.
Yeah, well, I think he got injured during the international break. But
that would explain it.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Mainu during that international break I think he's really impressed a lot of people. I think I said it on the podcast a few weeks ago that I felt like he wasn't getting any hate, which was a little bit weird. And I think now he's getting to a level where people are going, oh, he's actually class, and now he's starting to get the hate, which is, you need that as a United player. It just comes, doesn't it?
So talking about midfield, normally at this point in the podcast we start to play a little bit of a game, and this week what I've decided what we're going to do instead is we're going to debate keep or sell for 5 Man United players whose futures are very much kind of up in the air. And we're going to start with Casemiro. So I know you've already mentioned you think slap him on the plane to Saudi, and I agree to the extent that maybe he shouldn't be starting every single week from the kind of next season onwards. But I don't quite think, aside from the whole salary thing, he's on a load of money, I don't think necessarily it'd be the best idea to actually get rid of him, because I still think he has kind of a very valuable space in this squad, even if it's not starting every week, being the 5-time Champions League winner, playing for Brazil for over a decade. I personally think we should keep him.
Like you said, there are intangibles behind the scenes where, Mainu's mentioned that Casemiro has been one of the players who have helped him the most, and Bruno, which
we've got to put a stop to that right now.
but obviously there's behind the scenes stuff, but I think I maybe not to the extent that Cam's mentioned, but I do think it would probably be better, especially with kind of recent reports saying that Casemiro's future. I think it was the Telegraph mentioned that Casemiro's future kind of is dependent, or Man United's pursuit of a midfield target this summer is dependent on Casemiro's future. So if he stays, maybe unlikely that we get a first team kind of midfield starter. If he goes, maybe they'll look for that Onana or someone else. I think if that is true, which you don't 100% know, but if that is true, he's 100% got to go, because you've got to get a new midfielder in. If not, and you could maybe bring in a new midfielder, even then you go, the wages are ridiculous. So, in my opinion, it is a sell. but maybe not as strong. Maybe not as strong as Cam.
Well, I think you mentioned earlier about how quickly Mayu's made himself at home in the England squad with the manager and with the players. I think players straight away recognise good players. When you you see it at any level. When you put a good player into an environment, the other good players immediately go, hang on, he's good. And they start to connect. And that's what's happened with Mayu. That's why they all love him, because they know he's a serious player. And I worry it's almost the opposite with Casemiro, because obviously there's the intangibles there in terms of his leadership. But if players are seeing him constantly giving the ball away, making all these mistakes, actually it can have the opposite effect. And people can say, well, yeah, I need to do the sort of intensity, that side of things that Casemiro probably brings. But actually, I think if you've got more players like Mayu in the dressing room, that will only help, because it will get players better at doing the things that we actually want to value as a football club.
Isn't that last point's really interesting, isn't it? Because we do, at United over the past few years, I feel like we have really praised those players who bring those possession qualities that Mayu has. But I hate to use them as an example, but at City, that's the norm. That's every player in their squad has that kind. Maybe not to a lot of them around the same, but like not everyone has to be Mayu's quality, because he is really good. But that kind of like move in that direction. So yeah, it's an interesting point. But yeah, I do think Casemiro's I think 2-1 to you, because
I do think United's stance on Casemiro for the transfer this summer is weird. I don't get why. It might just be a budgetary thing, but I don't understand why you have to sell Casemiro to go and get another midfielder in. Because surely the perfect option, as I said before, is get another midfielder in and keep Casemiro. Like, I feel like having Casemiro as the kind of focal point and reason why you do or don't buy another midfielder doesn't make sense, because in an ideal world you would have Casemiro and also the next Casemiro together in the squad. And it's the same point that I have with Rafael Varane, who is the next player I was going to talk about. Is obviously United haven't offered him a new contract yet. His contract is up this summer and they're not triggering the 1-year extension. And I know I said this a few weeks ago as well. I think getting rid of Varane would be a mistake, even if it is to save a couple £100,000 a month on wages, because you should have Varane. He's only missed like 2 or 3 games this season through injury, and all the other games he's missed has actually just been because Ten Hag hasn't been selecting him. So he's slightly disproved this season that injuries are a reason why he should not be playing anymore, because he's actually been available pretty much the entire season, which is a big credit to him. And I think retiring from international football has helped him with that, and I think it'd be a massive mistake to get rid of him this summer.
Yeah, I agree, to be honest. It's like you said, I think Maguire and Lindelof have both been more injury prone than him in the last 12 months. And I mean, there is that issue, but hopefully if we're talking that Varane signs on a lower terms, then you can maybe afford for him to not have that pressure of starting every game, and you maybe get another centre-back in who... Because United need to buy a centre-back, because Johnny Evans, we don't 100% know what's going to happen with him. It's definitely overperformed a lot of people's expectations, but he's going to be, 37 or 38 next year? Like, you can't expect him to have the same role that he's had this year, because that's been way over anyone's expectations. You've got Harry Maguire, who, I don't know if he's on this list later, but I think United should cash in, because it kind of that will show whether United know to cash in when a player's stocks are high, and that's kind of what I think they need to do with Maguire. Personally, I like Maguire. Lindelof is touch and go, so you've got like so many futures there. Lisandro Martinez and Willy Cambuala are probably the only two certain like kind of first team centre backs who they'll be here next year. So I think Varane, you need to get his future tied down, but it's difficult because I don't think you should do it on his current wages, which they're not planning to. So hopefully there can be an agreement there. But yeah, I'd keep Varane for this squad.
What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a great mentor for Cambuala and for any other young pros coming through. I think I'm a little bit worried with some of his in-possession stuff recently. He's sort of like jumped over the ball or passing balls out of play quite often. But I think on balance, he's probably the best pure defender we've got in the squad. And he's still a fantastic player overall. So definitely keep him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned about kind of stocks being high for certain players. The next one I want to bring up is Scott McTominay, because there's been a report from the Daily Star, so kind of question the reliability of it, that he's kind of really turned around people's thoughts on him. Obviously, he has been fantastic as a bench option. He's kind of box crashing, gung ho, smack the ball in from wherever he is on the pitch. And they're potentially offering him a new contract. And the report says doubling his wages from 60 to 120. That I don't necessarily believe. I think that's just more speculative. But Scott McTominay was for sale last summer, and kind of a 30 million fee was slightly agreed, but not quite with West Ham. And there were reports a few months ago saying that United hope West Ham come in again. But now there's a report saying that he might get a new contract. So what should United do? I know, Cam, you're a big fan of McTominay, so I'll obviously let you speak first on him.
Yeah, for me, I'd definitely keep him. I think he's got a lot to offer the squad. I know people don't like him because he's not the best in possession, and he can be a little bit ropey at times with certain aspects of his game, defensive positioning being one thing. But I think whatever happens in a game of football, you need people that are good in both boxes, and he is. He's got quality in the final third, and obviously defensive set pieces, which could be a problem when Martinez comes back into the side. He's a big lad. He gets his head in the way of things. He'll give everything to block the ball. And ultimately, I think in the squad, you need certain players who will just do absolutely everything. I know they're all professional footballers and they should all be doing it, but sometimes you need a few players who it just means a little bit more to, and they'll hopefully drive the standards and keep the intangibles, as you mentioned earlier. That's what Scott McTominay has in spades. So I think for all his qualities and all of his issues as well, on balance, I'd definitely keep him. Not expect him to start every game, but he's a really important player I'd want to keep in the squad.
Yeah, McTominay's a weird one for me, because I agree with most of what you just said. I think he's amazing in both boxes, and you can really use that option off the bench, especially in, you've shown it in countless games. The main thing that worries me, and it's the exact same thing that I mentioned with Maguire, is his stocks are very, very high right now after this season. I think in some ways, it would be a smart decision to see if you can get 35, 40 million, especially because he's an academy player, and with the FFP kind of concerns at United, that would be a big help of kind of pure profit on Scott McTominay. And, as a fan, not thinking about the behind the scenes stuff or that you can maybe get the most money from this summer, he is just a really good player because of those things. You can tell that he cares more. In that Liverpool game, I don't really like when Scott McTominay starts in the midfield too often. But that Liverpool game, you'd go, perfect. It's the game for him. Those games he thrives in, and even though there's difficulty, I think in the middle of the game he had a bit of difficulties, but he made the difference for United. In that game a lot, I think.
He played a bit of it on one leg as well.
Yeah, and he's the sort of player who would do that. Him and Bruno both would probably play through any injury possible. But yeah, if I was to make that final decision, if I was in charge, maybe I would say sell for the same reasons as Maguire. I like both players. I think both players probably could have a good future at United and be part of a squad. But you're not getting, after this season, there's going to be clubs in for him. And also, I think it would be good for him to be a consistent first-team start. Because I think for a team like West Ham, he'd be a brilliant player. He'd be really good for a team like West Ham. And maybe, obviously, I think he'd be willing to be a squad player for United. But that could be a factor as well. But yeah, I'll say begrudgingly sell for McTominay.
I think you could get a player who's a better fit for the overall team for the same amount of money you'd be able to sell Scott McTominay for. If they were to sell him for, let's say, 30, 35, 40 million, I think you could be able to find, this kind of links back to what I said earlier about maybe keeping Casemiro and also finding the next Casemiro. You could use Scott McTominay's money to then go and find said player, but only if you were to get that amount of money for Scott McTominay. Because I think he is worth that to United.
Yeah, I would.
Because he is a fantastic. He is a great addition to the squad. I think maybe if you get him and give him a new contract with it written that he's a plan B in it, that'd be great. But I don't want to see him starting every week. No. Just personally, I think he's not the right. Not to say he's not good enough to start. Not to say for Manchester United, but just as a regular in a Premier League team. But he doesn't suit where United want to go from next season onwards in midfield if he was to play week in, week out, because he's got too many flaws.
Yeah. It's a good point as well. I wouldn't sell him for less than probably like 25. 25 is even quite low, like probably like 30.
I think 30 million.
I think for me, I don't think for anything less than 35 million, you're going to get a regular Premier League starter who's good enough to play for United.
Yeah.
So I think maybe, to be honest, maybe even 40 million, because they're going rate for any Premier League player that's half decent.
It is funny though, because if United wanted Scott McTominay, that's at least 40 million.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And the next player I was going to mention is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So United have been linked with potentially signing a new right back this summer. And obviously we have Diogo Dalot, who is not going anywhere. Everyone loves it at the minute, including me. Big fan of him. And I think he's been our player of the season. And if you've got Dalot Wan-Bissaka, but you're being linked with a new right back, surely that means that one of them will go, which will probably be Wan-Bissaka if he was to keep, or if the squad were to sell him. So should they sell him? Because he's obviously got so many unique qualities that I just can't find anywhere with any fullback in kind of the way he plays. And I think his dribbling is underrated, unaesthetic, but also quite underrated. But if United are going in for a new right back this summer, should it be time to cash in?
I don't know. Maybe, but it's also, I think it is interesting that they did. I think they only triggered the +1 on his contract, which is a big sign that might be what they're looking towards. Could also be waiting for Ineos to bring in their team to assess the situation. But I think you probably are looking at left back more than right back if you're going to target one of those fullback areas. I think that's a bigger priority now with the amount of injury. Well, I know it's just one injury for Malacia, but it seems like it's a very serious one which could affect him going forward. And Luke Shaw's amazing, but he's also Luke Shaw. So, but if you are talking directly right back, I would keep Wan-Bissaka for the following season, because I think there's a lot more pressing kind of situations to deal with. I do think maybe the season after he'd potentially be gone, and that might be the +1. I'm not sure if the +1 is for the end of next season, because then obviously he'd be going on a free, and you don't really want that.
I think it is.
It might, yeah. So there's kind of a situation to get there, but I like Wan-Bissaka, but I don't think long term it's like a perfect backup. I've never been a big fan of a backup offering completely different assets to the starting player. So it's almost like if De Gea stayed and you had Onana and De Gea swapping, and it's like they're completely different skill sets, and it's quite similar to with Wan-Bissaka and Dalot. So it's a little bit weird if Dalot seemed, if we continue this and develop an actual kind of proper build-up structure, and it's looking really good with Dalot inverting in, playing those passes which he's been playing all season, and then he gets injured, and then you bring in Wan-Bissaka, who's got his own qualities, and we know that he's amazing at those qualities, but then it completely switches up what United are doing. So I'm personally not a massive fan of having those completely different profiles. Obviously, it offers you stuff where you can lock up Mo Salah on a weekend, but yeah. But personally, I would keep for this summer because there's bigger fish to fry. But maybe the next summer it could be a sell.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe you keep him and let him go on a free. I think obviously it's not ideal, but at the same time, I think it's worth giving him another shot. I think you can get away with 5 fullbacks in the squad, especially given Luke Shaw could be covering centre back as well next season, depending on how many we bring in. So I think we could have 2 right backs and then 3 left backs, or 3 and 2 the other way around. But I agree with you in terms of having 2 completely different skill sets. I don't like it. And what you're basically then doing if you get another right back is saying, unless we play Mbappe, you're not playing.
Yeah.
And as good as that is, if you're maybe Man City or if you're England in a tournament, I think if you're employing someone for 1 or 2 games a season, nah, not for me.
Just to confirm, his contract is until 2025.
Yeah, I'd hate to
so
see
the
him leave.
1 year extension means it expires next summer.
Yeah, so I'd probably let him walk on a free, unless he's played
50
every
million
game.
player walking on a free.
That is crazy though.
Yeah, but
It's just it's just got to happen.
I think unless he plays every game up until January, I would just be saying, right, okay, look, thank you for your service, you've done well, but you can go.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned tournament because he would be a great squad player for England.
I've always thought that he'd be really good for England, but England's weirdly talented at right back.
Yeah.
Really weirdly talented at right back.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Walker's not exactly done badly against him.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's probably done the best against him.
Yeah.
Apart from Tuan Zabi a few years ago. But no, yeah, I like Wan-Bissaka as well. He's such a like we said about McTominay. It's good to mention Wan-Bissaka because like out of the team, he's one of the few players like you will not hear a peep in the media from him. He'll just do his little awkward TikTok interview with JD Sports.
That was random, yeah.
and just go back home, get training, and go back. That is a rarity in today's game. So it's something.
I think keep as well. I think it's worth it considering as you said, there are bigger kind of holes in the squad which need filling, and also in a time that's so uncertain. I think it's nice to have a player who you can rely on like Wan-Bissaka, because you really can rely on him to lock down a winger if you need to, and even if it's at left back like against Salah when we played Liverpool. I think kind of you saw that and you were like, okay, I think that's fine. We can pretty much leave him to it, and there's not the uncertainty that so many players bring. So I think keep this summer. Reluctantly let him walk next summer, because the point that you made about having a backup that's similar to Dalot, assuming Dalot is going to be the long-term starter, is better to have in the squad, because it means just there's a consistent playing style, which has been an issue at United. And the last player I was going to bring up is Johnny Evans. So when United signed Johnny Evans, it was for pre-season, and after he had trained a bit, and then lo and behold, last day of the season, he's got a 1-year deal, and he does have an extension in that. And effectively, I'm more asking here, should United trigger it?
Yeah, you might as well. I mean, if United had a strong back line and everyone was fit all the time, I'd probably say no, but we've got one, like I said, we've got two defenders who we know are going to be here next season, barring Johnny Evans. And one's a kid and one's had a few injury problems in the past year or so. I feel like Evans has outperformed Lindelof. Maguire maybe not, but he's been more consistent than Maguire, kind of appearance-wise. He's not really had as many injuries. And he is just steady, and he's a nice player, like an experienced head to have in the squad. If you are losing other kind of experienced players, I don't actually know what wages he's on, but I can't imagine it's much.
That's good. Well, I've got no idea.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a safe, like, unless you're planning on bringing in 3 centre-backs in the summer, it's a safe keep. And hopefully he doesn't have to start against bloody Liverpool and City and all these other teams next season, and he can actually just play that Carabao Cup game and kind of chill out a little bit more.
I think it's really worth keeping him, because this is a bit of a weird point, but because of the departure, I think, of Tom Heaton. I think Tom Heaton's got a really underrated role in this team as just like kind of that 36, 37-year-old who's just like always there. And I think Heaton is leaving this summer, I believe. I think his contract's up. And Johnny Evans can kind of take that role. And if he becomes the 5th choice centre-back that he was meant to be and stays that because people are fit, then I think he's actually a pretty... It's the intangibles thing that we keep coming back to with various different players. I think it's definitely worth keeping. I think he's been surprisingly good. I keep thinking about that assist against Burnley, for Bruno's goal. It was spectacular.
That was a proper Sir Alex ball as well.
It was
Just
fantastic.
like little diag, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, Cam?
I'd definitely keep him. I think he's one of those players you can just tell when you watch him. He just gets it. He knows what he's supposed to do, and tactically, probably, bar Martinez, probably the most intelligent of our centre-backs. I think he picks the right moments to step out with the ball. I mean, sometimes he gets a little bit carried away and goes for an extra roulette or something stupid that he probably shouldn't be doing. But I think most of the time he just gets it, and he knows how to manage himself, knows how to manage a game, knows how to manage and deal with different occasions. So you can see, obviously, he's been brought in for some big games this year, and in no game really has he been the reason we've lost. His performance levels are pretty decent, and as you say, as a 5th choice centre-back, I really don't think you can get too many better, because he's not going to be annoyed if he doesn't play. It's not killing his development. And I think he'd probably be grateful for the role that he's got, so I'd definitely keep him for another year.
It's weird to think that United got rid of him 10 years ago. Like, kind of retrospectively, obviously hindsight's 2020. Why did United do that? Because I remember Gary Neville saying a few weeks ago he was kind of shocked when United got rid of him in 2014, I believe. Yeah. And then he's come back 10 years later and he's been our most consistent centre-back.
That
at
is mad.
37 years
that's
old.
Mad. He has been.
He actually has been.
Consistent. Maybe Varane probably when he's played.
Okay,
but,
true. But
But he wasn't getting played.
There was a period when Varane wasn't playing for 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, it's surprising, but I think there's, like we say, like with the Casemiro and Varane kind of arguments, you do. Because if they were on, I'm going to say Evans might be on 60k a week or something like that. If they were on that, I'd keep them both 100% because it's like and if they're willing to take that role back, like you said, Evans wouldn't care about playing 5 games a season. But it's because they are 2 of the highest. It's kind of like there's no losses keeping Johnny Evans because hopefully, well, we said this at the start of the season, but hopefully next season it is that he's only playing
a few
games per season. So
I remember it was the Arsenal game where both Martinez and Varane, I think, got injured, and then we started the game with Varane, Martinez, ended it with Maguire and Evans. And obviously we then conceded the 2 goals and lost, and everyone was memeing really hard the fact that we have Johnny Evans. And now I'm really happy we have Johnny Evans, like completely unironically.
I see him on the team sheet and I'm not concerned. I'm
like,
quite
great,
happy.
sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, the first few times like he played, I remember going like, oh, Evans is starting. But now it is kind of like it's now actually not a surprise to see him start in a few games. So
part of the Johnny Evans fan club.
Fair play to him.
I think the reason that he's got on so well with Ten Hag and the players, I think, is because he just understands what he's supposed to do. Like you can see when the moment's there for him to step onto the second line and receive it in midfield, he just does it.
Yeah, he's experienced. It's just that like pure experience from playing in the league for so long.
I mean, Varane struggles with that sometimes. He doesn't want to go higher and receive because he doesn't trust himself. Evans knows what he can do and what he can't do, and I think that's a really admirable thing in a player.
Such a valuable quality, isn't it? Yeah. Something that I really wish more United players had. I think it's something that Kobbie Mayu does really well as well. Just going back to him is that kind of he knows exactly obviously he can do a lot, but he knows what to do, when to do it, and also why. I think that's the thing that United players sometimes struggle with, is they don't quite understand why they're doing something, and so they then just go and do something else that they think they should be doing. But Evans understands exactly kind of where to be, why he should be there, why it impacts the rest of the team. Yeah, what player. But moving on to kind of talking about Evans' consistency, there are players who have been very inconsistent, and one of them is unfortunately kind of been Mason Mount, in terms of he's been not available at all. But he's back. He played against Liverpool. He didn't really do much against Liverpool, but he just the fact that he's back 4 months into his 1 month injury is nice to see. And kind of how could that impact United? I know we talked about maybe Mount not being the best partner for Kobbie Mayu going forwards, assuming that Kobbie Mayu is just going to start from now on, which you think he probably is. But for the remainder of this season, I remember going back to when he came back from his first injury, he was playing quite well, kind of in the kind of November, October period. And with United pushing for top 4/top 5 Champions League spot and pushing for FA Cup glory, I think he could be a really, really positive addition to the rest of this season.
I really like Mace. Like, it is unfortunate that he's had his debut season like kind of interrupted with injuries, but when he did have that period which you're talking about, and it's similar to what we said about Evans, and I feel like Mount's one of those players, he knows what he can offer, and he's one of the few players that I've seen in a United team in the past couple of years where gets the ball and he knows where he's going to pass, and he touch pass. A lot of his kind of touches in the middle of the park are like that. And I think those players are like I mentioned about Mayu earlier, where it's like you need those players who can play that way. I think Mount is one of them, and I don't know whether he's going to have a big part to play for the end of this season, because it's going to be really hard to kind of get into a groove of things at this point. And do you then trust him to start a semi-final? I mean, semi-final might not be as kind of a big of a deal, because of all due respect, it is Coventry in the Championship, and
touch wood.
Yeah, touch wood. We should beat them with kind of whoever Ten Hag decides to put in there. We should do. But final, and then in those last Premier League games, if we do have a chance of getting the 5th position or top 4, if that happens, I don't know if you are trusting him as he's just coming back from injury. But longer term, I want to see him kind of consistently getting those minutes, because I rate him as a player, and he just does those simple things quickly. He's got a really good work rate off the ball. He's really useful, but maybe he's not a £50 million player in their last year of their contract. He definitely is not. But we've got him at the club, and I think he's a really useful player for the squad, personally.
That's it. You mentioned earlier Scott McTominay. What would it cost you to get someone similar? If he's 30 million, we paid 50 million for him with a year left on his contract. So
I think it was partly because of the Liverpool win. I think if you don't pay for Mount then, because obviously he's played only a handful of games or whatever, and everyone's saying could have just left it a year and got him for free. You couldn't have, because he would have gone to maybe Arsenal or Liverpool, or I think someone else was interested, but those were the main two competitors. But yeah, it's just annoying that he's missed so much football, and you paid that amount of money, and he's got the number 7 shirt. It's like they've just thrown darts at him, and he's got to try and dodge them. But no, yeah.
I think Mount represents the chance or the ability for Ten Hag to kind of go just full on final few games this season. Because against Liverpool, I get the feeling that when United were being battered in the second half, Ten Hag kind of just went, I'm just going to, obviously because it was a cup game, he kind of just went, you know what, I'm just going to just throw on players. He threw on Anthony. In the extra time, we had Anthony at left back, Bruno at centre back, about 8 attackers on the field. And I think that is an attitude I really hope Ten Hag takes for the rest of the season, because we have nothing to lose now. But from kind of, let's say we get into the FA Cup final, beat Coventry at Wembley, and in the league, we're already 6th. If we end up 7th, if we end up 8th, whatever, I'm not going to be any more or less disappointed, but I'll be ecstatic if we end up getting 5th or 4th. And I think Mason Mount this season, for the rest of this season, put him in instead of Casemiro, and just kind of really go for it. Because, and I say this, and the reason I'd be confident with us doing that is because Lisandro Martinez would also be back. And I think when we were playing so well earlier on the season, in that kind of period in January, February, it was partly because Martinez was back, and he opens up so much for us to do. I know we don't have Luke Shaw, but Dalot, I think, has been doing pretty decent at left back, and I assume Wan-Bissaka go right back, Dalot is going to go left back for the remainder of the season. And I think put Mason Mount on, have a midfield 3 of Bruno, Kobbie and Mayu, have a back 4 of Varane, Martinez. Sorry, yeah, who did I say? Did I say Kobbie and Mayu? If we could, I wish. If we have Mount, Mayu, Bruno in midfield, a back 4 of Dalot, Lisandro Martinez, Varane and Wan-Bissaka, I think that's a really dominant kind of back line and midfield line. And then the attack Garnacho will just keep running like he always does. Rashford, I think, hopefully, will do better for the rest of the season. And Rasmus Højlund, I think, will just pick up where he left off, hopefully. Because he's now back fit. He's had the minutes with Denmark, had the minutes against Liverpool. Hopefully he doesn't get another injury. But I really think Mason Mount could be a kind of an addition that help kind of catalyses United for the rest of this season. And looking at that photo now, I kind of do get the comparisons a bit between me and Mount. There's a bit of a side point.
He's put the hat on to try and hide it.
I actually have. And the comment last week about me wearing a Wales kit to try and disguise the fact, I do get it with the short. If he had more of a beard. Yeah, anyway, so that's a complete sidetrack. But I'm kind of using that last point to go on to what can United achieve for the rest of this season. Because we have, as I said, the FA Cup pushing for top 4. We are 6 points behind Spurs in 5th, and I believe 8
I think
points.
It's 9.
Is it 9 behind Villa with a game in hand?
Yeah, I think.
How likely is it that we get Champions League, assuming 5th place becomes Champions League?
it's going to be tough, isn't it? Because we've still got big games to come at Old Trafford. So I think if we didn't have to play Arsenal, for example, and Newcastle, I'd say we could probably go on a winning run and win almost every game.
We've got Chelsea and Liverpool as well next week.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Liverpool game in particular will be really interesting because from the players' perspective, they've done it before. Can they then do it again?
You see it a lot with those kind of big games where two maybe rivals or two big teams play in the cup, and then it always seems to be that they play in the league like the week after or a couple of weeks after, and it seems like it's usually the other result, and hopefully obviously it isn't. But yeah, like you said, it does seem like And it's also like a tactical kind of thing where you have to adjust in such a small amount of time against the exact same team. It's for the rest of the season. I think top 4 is really hard. Oh, obviously maybe 5th position. I think with top 4 you are gambling on both Spurs and Villa to really mess up at the back end of this season. And I think it is probably viable that one of them does. I don't think both, so I think top 4 is kind of a very difficult feat.
I think 4th is too far away.
I think 5th is possible because you do, like one game week changes it like that. You see that we didn't play, we won against Liverpool in the Cup, got loads of confidence. Villa luckily drew, Spurs lost, and then you go, ooh, it's looking a little bit better than it was a few hours ago. So it could literally be a couple of game weeks, but like you said, I do look at our fixtures, and I think our next 5, 3 away games, Liverpool at Old Trafford, and then the semi-final at Wembley, and it's like, and those away games are like Chelsea. I mean, we can joke about Chelsea, but they could turn up, and they have turned up quite a lot. It seems like they're a little bit United of old, where not of old, but a certain period under Solskjaer where it seemed like we couldn't get many results against teams below us, but always turned up against good teams. That seems what Chelsea are kind of doing at the moment, apart from
and as we all know, Brentford away is no easy game.
It's a tough game. Yeah. Especially with Martinez coming back into the team. I think he might even put him at left back for this game. Just so he can
I don't think he'll start. I kind of don't want, unless Martinez is completely fully fit, which I feel he might not be because all he's done is train with Argentina. If he had some minutes for Argentina, then I'd feel more confident with that, but he's not played yet. Yeah. He's just trained.
Yeah. And Ivan Toney looks sharp.
Yeah, he looked really good for England the other day. Yeah. FA Cup, though, get into it. I mean, how many finals Ten Hag's been really good in the cup competitions, really. I think it's only the Europa League. It's only the Europa League and the Carabao Cup and the Champions League this season. But yeah, back-to-back FA Cup finals, probably against Manchester City again. I mean, I don't think that game has any bearing on his job, because I think if Ratcliffe and Brailsford and Ashworth, when he comes in, if we agree with Newcastle, a bloody fee. But if those guys are serious, they're not going to choose the manager for the next few years on a one-game result, even if that game is very, very, very important, because I don't think I can deal with United losing back. I really hope Chelsea win in the semis.
That gives us a chance. Yeah. If it's City, we're not winning. Because I think the difficulty with that is they've been in that position before. They've played against us, and they know. City have got realities. They've got our number now. They know every time they play against United, all they've got to do is start fairly well, keep the ball. We'll give them a chance in the first 20 minutes. If they score, game over.
Do you know what annoys me about that? Well, I hope that you've got a fully fit squad, because I still remember the FA Cup final last season, and Garnacho caused them absolute havoc in those. In those last 15 minutes, he could have got us an equaliser. And that's one thing I think is a random kind of topic, and I think we touched on it a few weeks ago. But him moving into a starting role is really good for him and his development. But it's almost been a bit of a setback for United and Ten Hag, because you don't have him as an option off the bench, because he was a really good option off the bench and could have been important in games like this, which we're talking about, like the back end of the season. But you don't really have that player. Hopefully, Ahmad's not available for the next game, I believe.
No, because he's suspended.
Yeah, but hopefully he can kind of make more of an impact. But also, he did make the impact off the bench against Liverpool, but I don't see him being like a proper bench threat. But hopefully he can kind of have a bigger role. There's a lot of players who have got a point to prove in these last 10, 12 games.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of players who are playing for their contracts in the remaining games. I'd feel not weirdly confident if we play City in the final, but I feel more confident this season than I did last season. That might be just because we don't have the players who made the big mistakes last season. This season, having De Gea, and they don't have Ilkay. But I don't know. I just feel like there's a bit more of. It might just be me getting carried away with the Liverpool result, but there's a little bit more unpredictability on both sides for United this season. Like, we can I think we're more likely to pull a result out of the bag this season.
We also need to
more
get past
likely to
Coventry.
lose.
We do need to get past
Yeah.
We
Coventry.
do need to get past. Obviously, this is on the assumption that we beat Coventry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't the
That's a
thing
weird
is as
game.
well, they like I think it was their centre back. I don't remember his name, but he did say that was our favourable draw. Like we got a. Well, I mean, come on, Chelsea.
Yeah.
But
Anything that's not City for them is good.
yeah, but we can't underestimate them because it's a proper classic FA Cup story, isn't it? Them beating United to get to the final. So
And they've been to Wembley a lot of times in recent seasons as well, so it's not like they're going to be overawed by the occasion.
As with each time we get a new person on the show, we put them to a test a little bit. So you're going to have 2 minutes to answer as many Manchester United related questions as you can. Cam, are you ready?
Not really, but here we go.
Your time starts in 3, 2, 1, now. How many Premier League goals did Ronaldo score when he broke the record for most in a season?
It was 42 all comps, 28 in the league.
Wrong, 31. Who was the last captain of Manchester United before Harry Maguire?
Pass.
Ashley Young. What was Brian Robson's nickname at Manchester United?
Captain Marvel.
Correct. Who did Sir Alex Ferguson want to be United's number 7 before David Beckham took the shirt?
Pass.
Roy Keane. Who cost more, Bruno Fernandes or Lisandro Martinez?
Bruno Fernandes.
Correct. Old Trafford is situated on what road?
So that must be the way.
Correct. Which player had a chant labelling him the greatest player in the Premier League?
Cantona.
Juan Mata. What is the current capacity of Old Trafford?
73,800.
I'll take it. Is Marcus Rashford within Manchester United's top 15 all-time scorers?
Yes.
No. Who was Sir Alex Ferguson's last signing at United?
Pass.
Wilfred Zaha. In what year was Old Trafford built?
1906.
1910. Who was the captain of Manchester United during the historic treble-winning season?
Roy Keane.
Correct. The West Stand of Old Trafford is more famously known as what?
Stratford End.
Correct. How many seasons has Johnny Evans appeared for Manchester United?
6.
9. How many players hold the record? So which player holds the most record for most goals at Man United?
Wayne Rooney.
Correct. Who were Manchester United playing when Eric Cantona kung fu kicked a fan?
Palace.
Correct. How much did United buy Ander Herrera for?
27 million.
I'll take it. 29 million. Who won the penalty that Marcus Rashford scored in Paris?
Diogo Dalot.
Correct. Which 2 players were suspended for the 1999 Champions League final?
Scholes and... Pass.
Roy Keane. Name 3 players, and that's time.
Surely you started so you finish.
10. Not bad.
I'll take it.
So with Ten Hag having kind of all these players coming back, Rasmus Højlund's back to kind of full fitness, Wan-Bissaka back to full fitness, Lisandro Martinez coming back. Do you feel confident with these kind of going into the end of the season? Can Ten Hag actually get what we need for the end of the season? Or kind of is it just too far gone?
Yeah.
Even with the injuries
I think
coming back.
players coming back, it is good. Obviously, Lisandro Martinez, if he can stay fit, hopefully, touch wood, if he can stay fit for the rest of the season, can't lean forward, then it's a massive positive because he's crucial to how Ten Hag actually wants to play. But we talking about results a lot. I'd much prefer to see United play a better sustained kind of performance of football in these games rather than caring about the results, because we've said it quite a few times where we've gone, okay, he's got his players back, hope like the performances should improve, and I think results have. I don't think not to the extent which they should. I think that like kind of period in January, February where we went on like a bit of a winning run, I don't think the performances were amazing. So this back end of the season for Ten Hag, especially if Ratcliffe, like I said, if those guys are caring more about the project at hand rather than the results, even though Champions League, like Ratcliffe's mentioned, it's important for FFP reasons, etc. It would be more important to me personally if I see 8 out of these, or maybe like 9 out of these 12 or 13 games where I go, oh, United, I can see this. I can see where it's going. I can see that if we keep Ten Hag next season, then he's going to continue on this path rather than going, I don't want to keep going, okay, Ten Hag's he's got through the season, now we can look ahead. I want to see kind of signs of that coming through. And hopefully the kind of players returning, Mount, Lissandro, Rasmus, obviously. He looked quite sharp against Liverpool as well, Højlund. So hopefully he does kind of kick back in and continue playing well like he was before the injury. But yeah, I think that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I think tactically, I think we might see some different things. Obviously, you mentioned Mason Mount coming back. I wonder if we might start to see a bit more of a box midfield going on with Dalot tucking in. And you've got Mayu maybe at the base with him, and then Mount and Bruno in front. And that could obviously then give you the players between the lines to actually start playing with a bit more of the ball and sort of breaking teams down rather than just sort of relying on just transitions, which I think has given us good success because that's what our players are good at. But obviously, I think we all want to see a little bit more in possession, a little bit more of a what seems like a more well-defined approach to actually breaking teams down without having to resort to sort of baiting them to press us and just smacking the ball in behind. So I think with the players that we've got coming back, we could see it. Obviously, that man over there, Garnacho, has been pretty good. Kobbie Mayu alongside him, that they could be key for the rest of the season. And my one hope is that we're careful with Mayu in particular. He's starting to play a lot of games now in a very short space of time. And I think that if we want to see the best of him for the rest of this season at the Euros, but then also beyond for the rest of his career, we are going to have to be careful with him. So I think we're going to have to balance things properly. But I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot to look forward to. And for me, success would be winning the FA Cup. Don't really care massively about the league, in all honesty. I think if you'd offered me before the Liverpool game in the FA Cup that we win that and lose in the league, I would have snapped your hand off.
100%.
So I don't really... It'd be great if we got in the Champions League, but I think it's... Looking at the fixtures we've got left, Villa and Spurs would have to drop, 6 or 9 points more than we drop for the rest of the season. And we're going to drop at least 3. We're probably going to drop 7 or 8 points between now and the end of the season. So that means they in 10 games or so to go, they'd have to add 9 onto that.
If we won the FA Cup, that would be the first post-Fergie manager to win in 2 consecutive seasons, wouldn't it? Yeah, which is weird to think with all the kind of stuff at Ten Hag over the course of this season. So that is what he should be focused on as well, I think, because top 4 would be good for FFP for financial reasons. Like United right now, and I don't think they will be over a course of a summer unless it's an amazing summer. We won't be the best team in the Champions League, even though really our exit was down to some crazy mistakes from Andre Onana and a couple of dodgy red cards. Like, I think people forget that, to be fair. Like, was it the Marcus Rashford red card, which was absolutely ridiculous?
Against Copenhagen.
And but you can't make excuses because we got knocked out apparently. But yeah, I think this end of the season, like Cam said, winning that FA Cup, especially against even if it's not against City, against Chelsea, it's a big FA Cup, and they beat us.
A trophy's a trophy at the end of the day.
Was it 2018 they beat us in the FA Cup final? So it'd be useful to get to some kind of revenge if they get to the final.
So it's more important for the remainder of the season, you think, to have almost a glimpse into what could be progressing next season with all the players back, showing some sort of style of play, some confidence and consistency, than just kind of gung-ho going and trying to find that Champions League spot, and then instead going and trying to win the FA Cup and just kind of show people, and Ineos, I guess, a glimpse of what could be in the future. Yeah,
because I think personally one of Ten Hag's biggest problems since he's come in at United is that, and I feel like so many managers probably would go through the same thing, is that absolute pressure to get results
from minute one.
And you can't, and then he speaks about it in every interview. He's going, at United you need to win. You need to win. 3 points, most important thing. And it's like, that would be amazing if you could just have gave a manager 12 months to go, there's not as much pressure on you this season. Don't get bloody relegated or anything like that, but you can build what you want to build. There's not much pressure. Instead, he was getting Carragher and Neville 2 games in on Sky, looking at kind of questioning him, and he had to adjust. And short term, that was quite good for United, but longer term, it seemed like it would have been better if United and him kind of came to a compromise, and he goes, right, I'm not going to change everything, but I want to work on this style. I feel like he's probably compromised too much, and now it feels like it might be too like this. That's what I want to see from him. I want to see him go back kind of towards what he wants to do rather than focusing on getting a result. But yeah, it's a bit off topic, but
I think that about wraps up episode 10 of What the Devil. Thank you very much, Cam, for coming on. Always good to have you on, Kane, as well. If you have any thoughts on what we've been talking about this week, please let us know in the comments. If you've enjoyed, leave a like. If you've got any improvements, let us know. Remember to like, subscribe, listen on Apple Podcasts, listen on Spotify. Apart from that, we'll see you next week. Next Wednesday.